Hello, welcome back to another episode of the Cinema Scoop podcast with Sam and Jordan. Today we're going to be talking about some more 2023 releases that we've gotten a chance to see since we recorded our last 2023 episode. We've both seen a couple of 2023 releases together. I've seen a couple without Sam, and Sam's seen a couple without me, mostly in an effort to catch up on Oscar noms, make sure we got full coverage of at least seeing most of the most nominated films, and then just catching up once, towards the end of the year. Sometimes stuff is still not available, so then early 2024, a lot of 2023 movies become available on streaming, or they become cheaper to rent in some way. So we've been putting in work.
Yeah, these are pretty much ones we've seen the past 2 months. So we're gonna do this for each. 4 we've both seen, 4 we've done separately each. So we'll start with Migration, which we just saw yesterday with Grace in the theater, the animated duck movie with I'm blanking on the lead voice actor, but it has Elizabeth Banks, Keegan-Michael Key. But yeah, this was pretty good. Grace really liked it. There was a lot of quacking and dancing that she liked. Camila Nanjiani, how you say it?
Yeah.
He's the daddy duck.
Yeah.
It's pretty basic and sweet for a kid's movie. I thought if you go into it liking ducks or birds in animated movies, it's pretty good. I thought it was funny that we've seen that one and not The Boy and the Heron yet, because Migration has a scene with a heron and it's pretty funny. And then there's penguins at the end that are pretty funny. And Keegan-Michael Key plays a parrot that's locked up by a chef who never says a word. This like crazy looking chef, and all he wants to do is make duck l'orange. And then the ducks had to figure out what that even is, so it's pretty funny.
Yeah, this is Illumination, so the same studio that did Despicable Me and The Croods and The Mitchells versus the Machines and all that stuff. So I think The Mitchells versus the Machines is Illumination. Just kidding, it's not. Yeah, so the same studio that did
The Minions. So there was like a little short Despicable Me, called Mooned, where one of the bad guys of Despicable Me is on the moon. Yeah, he's like isolated, and then the minions come and make fun of him, and it was pretty funny. But
yeah, that one was it was a pretty good little kids movie.
Yeah, if you have a kid or if you're a big bird fan, I say go watch Migration.
It's cute.
The next one we watched was Society of the Snow, which was one of Alyssa's top 5 movies that she talked about in a previous episode. She presented it as a Fire Things Club pick recently, and that was really good. What did you think about Society of the Snow?
Gave me anxiety, but it was very good. I have a hard time, we follow a lot of the Oscar stats type of shit where it's like, this is going to probably be the one that wins based off of the SAG Awards, the Golden Globes, the yada yada, the BAFTAs. And this has 2 nominations. One is for international film and one is for makeup. I have a hard time seeing another movie winning for makeup over this one because they make them look like actually frostbitten and cold in a way that, and like sunburned, and the makeup is very well.
There's a lot that they do.
There's a lot that they do to make it look very realistic. But I also understand that, I think you said Poor Things is slated to win potentially.
I think so.
I understand that, being that, I was kind of, at first I was like, I don't really see Poor Things winning for makeup, but then I thought about it and I was like, well, there is Willem Dafoe.
Yeah, I mean, it's not really makeup and hairstyling, so
yeah,
that could be an element of Poor Things that they might pick. But yeah, I thought it was funny watching Society of the Snow because obviously it's a true event from 1972 about a Uruguay plane crash in the Andes Mountains. But I didn't really know the specifics of what happened, and so by day 9, of the movie, I was like, okay, they're about to be rescued, or a lot of people are going to die. And then it just kept going and going and going, and it was pretty funny that it lasted so long, because I thought it was similar to Napoleon, where I didn't actually know when Napoleon died. So there was multiple times in Napoleon where he's in the snow, and I'm like, oh, he's about to die, and he just doesn't. So it's kind of the same vibe of that, which I thought was funny.
So maybe if you don't know anything about the crash, go into it blind, because it'll probably be very like shocking to you in terms of like, yeah, this actually happened.
Yeah, I also like at one point I was like, so why would if it's kind of difficult to fly through the Andes Mountains, why would you do it? But then if you look at a map and you're from Uruguay and you're trying to fly west over Argentina to Chile, there's literally no way you can do that, because the entire east border of Chile is basically the Andes Mountains. And so unless you go all the way down to the tip of South America, you kind of have to go through the Andes Mountains, which is kind of the problem with that. But
yeah.
Okay, another one we saw together was All of Us Strangers.
Yeah, and this one I can kind of take the lead talking about. It's a good movie. Like I really enjoyed it, but I think I'm going to say this. I think that it was overhyped. I feel bad for saying that. I wanted to like it a lot more than I did. I really enjoyed it. There was a lot of like very beautiful scenes. There's a lot of very beautiful shots. Specifically, like there's one shot that's through a mirror that's very, very pretty, of when Andrew Scott is hugging his dad. That is like just a gut-wrenching shot. And then there's also every time he's in the elevator of his apartment building, those are all, where it's like the infinite mirror behind him. You've probably seen it on like some of the posters. Like those are both really, really beautiful shots. And there's a lot of other very pretty shots in this movie. But ultimately, it didn't like hit me in the gut and like hit me in the feels like I wanted it to. I wanted to cry really hard, and like it just never brought me there. However, I will say I think it's a very, very good movie. I think I'm just more disappointed that it wasn't great in my mind.
Yeah, like the performances are really good. Andrew Scott, Paul Mescal, and then Jamie Bell and Claire Foy are Andrew Scott's parents in the movie. It's pretty much those four actors, and that's kind of it. And it's kind of a smaller movie than I was expecting, and it was kind of like, once you get that his parents are dead and they're just like a visual representation of him going through his trauma for when they died. Like I kind of knew that going in, so as I was watching it, I was kind of not as like surprised, or like, I guess if you don't know that going in, then it's kind of like, why are his parents so young and why is this happening like this? But at the same time, I feel like it's kind of obvious what's happening. And then like it's not that I didn't care about him and Paul Mescal's relationship, but I felt like it was
kind of forced.
Well, I felt like it was weird that it was like they were the only two people in the entire apartment kind of thing, but they lived on different floors, and then it became like they were together, and then it was like, oh wait, spoiler alert, he was also dead. And so it was kind of empty for some of it.
A lot of people have speculated that this movie is everybody is dead. And that's only so many people in the movie, is because they're all technically dead. But I just feel like when you do magical realism in movies, you need to sort of like highlight it in a way that you understand that what is happening is magical realism. I almost feel like this movie blended a lot of that into the script to the point where it almost was a little bit confusing, where you're like, wait, is this real or is this magical realism? And I'm confused if I can't understand which one it is right now. Like, I don't really know how to explain that. But yeah, ultimately, it was just kind of like, I was hoping for like best film of the year for me, just because of, it having the main two actors in it. work like playing off of each other. And then the actual subject matter is really interesting to me, but I just feel like the execution was a little bit more more style than substance.
Yeah, it kind of felt like Past Lives a little bit, where it was like, yeah, this is good, but I also couldn't get 100% on board with what was happening.
I could get more on board with Past Lives than I could with this. Past Lives, I could at least be like, everybody has had a childhood love, but this was like, random man in my apartment building tries to come up to my door and give me a come on.
Yeah.
It was, yeah. Ultimately, it was just like not a super organic like love story. It felt very forced to me. But I mean, I'll take a forced Paul Mescal any day of the week. I'm fine with that. But it still is like a forced romance in my mind. It just doesn't feel as organic as it could have.
Yeah. So the next movie we'll talk about we'll briefly talk about Killers of the Flower Moon. We made our Martin Scorsese best of in honor of that coming out, and then it finally got on Apple TV, and we finally watched it. Overall, very good movie, great performance by Lily Gladstone. She might win the Oscar now. She just won the SAG Award for Best Actress, so she's maybe the front runner to win Best Actress at the Oscars in 2 weeks. The score was actually very interesting, and obviously the story was good, and like Martin Scorsese does a good job of like reining in what could have been more of a Leo Robert De Niro story, and it turned out to be more of a Native American story, which I really preferred.
I think the original version of the script was not about the white character.
Yeah, originally it was about the white characters more, and then Lily Gladstone kind of came in and was like, we should focus more on
like the actual issues at hand.
So yeah, I think it turned out better than what it could have been, but I think similar to The Irishman and some of other Scorsese movies, I think it was a little too long, and I think it's one of those movies where once you start it, you kind of get what it's about, like what it is, and so I felt most of the overall story in Killers of the Flower Moon kind of became repetitive at points, but it's still a good movie. I'd recommend you watch it, especially since there's not that many wide-reaching Native American films, especially by high-level directors.
Yeah.
And then the next one is The Curse. So The Curse isn't really a movie. It's a 10-episode show by Nathan Fielder on Paramount Plus with Emma Stone and Benny Safdie. We might do like a separate podcast episode just about this show because it's so intricate and crazy. But ultimately, it was really good. We highly recommend it if you haven't seen it. Do you have anything else to say about The Curse?
Yeah, it's hard to talk about it in a 2023 movie wrap up, but at the same time, it's one of my favorite TV shows to come out in 2023. I haven't seen that many TV shows from 2023. I think it probably deserves its own episode, but it is, if you like Nathan Fielder, or if you like Benny Safdie, or David Lynch for that,
or Emma Stone.
Yeah, if you like any of those things, part and parcel, like on their own, you'll like this. It's like one of the most creative, out there TV shows I've seen come out in a very, very, very long time. A lot of people compare it to Twin Peaks: The Return, which I also just finished. And I like watch them basically at parallel with each other, and it's like great dual perspective on both because they're both very similar.
Yeah, and Christopher Nolan, who directed Oppenheimer, is very vocal about liking this show, The Curse. He did a Q&A panel with Nathan Fielder and Benny Safdie on YouTube. It's pretty funny, and I think it's awesome that Christopher Nolan, who's probably going to win Best Director in a few weeks, doesn't have to go out his way to promote something like The Curse, but I think it's admirable and makes it more interesting if you don't know what The Curse is. So now we'll go back and forth. Jordan could do one, I'll do one. We each have 4 other films that we've individually seen that the other one has not seen, but we'll try to see it together at some point. But Jordan just took a flight for business and saw 2 of these films. Do you want to?
Yeah, I was actually gonna talk about. There's 3 I've technically seen from 2023 that. One of them you already talked about on our wrap up, but I finally watched it, which is Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning. Nix the part 1. It will just be Dead Reckoning now. My plan is to go back through and rewatch all of the Mission Impossible movies now because I've seen 6 and 7. So I got to go back and watch number 1, and then I got to rewatch 6 and 7 when I get back there.
And then we can maybe do a Mission Impossible episode.
I definitely think we should do a Mission Impossible episode, but I was pleasantly surprised with how much I enjoyed this. I think what I enjoy the most is just like the nail-biting stress of it. Like, it really does like just immerse you in like the thrill of it. Yeah, the tension is really, really good. Like, I haven't seen something that like action movie anxiety inducing since like Taken. And I can't think of anything else that I've seen that's been that nail biting. And so I could care less what the stipulations are or like what the stakes are or anything. You visually understand the stakes. Like, you can have the shitty, I'm not saying it does, but you can have the shittiest like writing and scripting. If somebody is visually jumping off a cliff, you kind of have to give a shit about it because it's like in your face and it's right there. But yeah, so I saw that one. Do you want to do one or do you want me to keep going or okay? So the next one I saw without you is Priscilla, which, yeah, for context, I put Mission Impossible. I saw 37 2023 releases. Mission Impossible is like number 14. Number 15 is Priscilla. I love Sofia Coppola. I'm wearing a Sofia Coppola shirt today. Lost in Translation is in my top 4 favorite movies of all time. So anytime Sofia Coppola is involved in something, I'm going to like it for the most part. Unless you're The Bling Ring, because I didn't like that.
We recently also watched Marie Antoinette. Me for the first time. You've seen it before, but
I enjoyed it more the second time. But I feel like it's very, like, Priscilla is very similar to Marie Antoinette in that it is a female biopic about a doomed woman who it kind of gives light and sheds light on who they were, why they were the way that they were, why they made certain choices. And then it's also, like, historically accurate in that it's, like, highly stylized, similar to Marie Antoinette, how, they show her getting ready and it's, like, bits and pieces of the time so that, it feels like you're immersed in that time. And the same thing happens in Priscilla. Like, all of her beauty products are very 1960s, 1970s branded, and the packaging and stuff looks a lot like that. Jacob Elordi is hunky as hell. It's a good time. Music's good. I don't really have much else to say about it. I would definitely rewatch it. It's a very easy to understand movie.
I think it just got on HBO Max, so we might watch that.
It is on Max, yeah.
Soon.
Yeah, I like that one a lot.
Okay, one for me, The Zone of Interest, which is nominated for Best Picture, Best Director, Best International Film. Jonathan Glazer, this is kind of like his 4th movie ever. He's been working over a decade on this movie. We also recently watched Sexy Beast for the first time, which was really good. And then Under the Skin with Scarlett Johansson's another film he did in 2013. So this is like his next movie after that, 11 years or 10 years later. It's hard to find or think about another movie that uses sound the way this Zone of Interest does. It forces you to listen and to wonder and expect and question what you heard, what you didn't hear, what you're trying to hear, what you are hearing. And obviously it's a backdrop to the Holocaust, and it's about the German family, the Haas family, who lives in a house right outside the Auschwitz concentration camp. And the whole premise is basically just about the family and their day-to-day lives and what they just do at their house and how they just live as Germans in the Nazi Germany time. And the caveat is the entire time you're like, well, they're right next to Auschwitz where they're murdering all these people, and you never see any of it. And that's the point, is what's the line of evil? Do we hear it? Do we see it? If you don't see it, can you just be a normal person and go about your day-to-day life? What are the boundaries of being able to hear some terrible things but not being able to see them? And then it's just like a haunting film that you're gonna want to watch and you're gonna never really forget. And I think it's really good. And if there's only one movie you watch on these lists, you should watch The Zone of Interest. And I had to go to the theater. There was very limited theaters that were playing it. It's not even available on VOD right now. So you might have to wait a few weeks or months before you can see it. But as soon as you're able to see The Zone of Interest, you should see it.
Do you prefer this or do you prefer Schindler's List as far as like posterity for Holocaust?
Well, I've only seen Schindler's List once a long time ago. I think one of the other things about this film, and I could talk a long time about it, but ultimately, the way they shot it was they basically had stationary cameras everywhere, and it was almost like a 24/7. The actors are by themselves on the production site, and the director and all the crew are actually pretty far away watching everything happen. And it's almost like, and the amount of time he put into like crafting the story and learning all the details of this real life family that really existed and the contributions to the terrible atrocities of Auschwitz. I think because they don't show anything, there's no like really gruesome, like, oh, this is really sad type of stuff, but it's more like it kind of like messes with your brain as to like, well, I'm trying to, like, it's like your brain understands it's a Holocaust movie, but they're literally not showing you the Holocaust. They're showing you the family, the main family, and the main man figure who killed all these people, and it was his job to efficiently kill people, and like everything that goes into that. So yeah, I would have to rewatch Schindler's List, but I think strictly from a sound and atmosphere and environment perspective, this is definitely really good.
Cool. So I have 3 more that I've seen, and you have 3 more. So the next one I watched was Dumb Money, which is basically just a biopic of the GameStop stock fiasco that happened in 2020, 2021 in like real life. It has such a good cast for it to be such a poorly written movie. It's Paul Dano as the main character and he's married to Shailene Woodley. Like, that's believable. They do not look like they've ever been in the same room as each other. America Ferrera is in this one. Pete Davidson is supposed to be Paul Dano's biological brother, which makes absolutely no sense. Like, they don't look like they're even remotely from the same family tree. Seth Rogen plays like a venture capitalist billionaire man who runs a hedge fund. Nick Offerman is also a super rich billionaire person. It's fine. Like, it's a movie. It's fine. It's not like, I was telling Sam this, I feel like there's sort of varying degrees to bad movies. There are movies that are so bad that they're offensive. And then there's bad movies that are so good that because they're so bad that they're actually enjoyable. And then there's just this sort of like sad middle where it's just like, this is just a bad movie that makes me feel nothing. And that's kind of where Dumb Money is at, where it's like, you wanted it to be more, you wanted it to be better. It's just not. I feel like I still don't fully understand what happened with this GameStop thing, even after seeing this movie. They never really explain explicitly why this whole thing actually worked, except to say that Paul Dano has a YouTube channel where he convinces a bunch of poor people to do the same thing as him by investing in GameStop. When they could have talked about why this worked that way a little bit more. Like, they briefly mention like Seth Rogen mentions at one point how GameStop during the pandemic became considered an essential business and could stay open or could open in certain areas because they sold computer mouses. So it was like, oh, that gives them an edge over other like random mall tenants. But I don't think that's the only reason that this whole like short squeeze thing worked. And so it just kind of felt empty. It was like more of just like a vulgar comedy trying to tell a true story. And I shit you not, 33% of this movie is just interludes of like mashed up TikToks of people explaining, I'm buying GameStop stock. This is why. And then it's like memes from like Reddit, which I get that this movie is like about a subreddit that did this, but it's just very like I feel like this is going to age like milk.
Yeah, I felt like the premise, or from my understanding of what actually happened in real life, was it was a lot of people bought GameStop at a certain time, and then to offset that, people with actual money had to also put money into GameStop, so the stock kept rising. But I guess Paul Dano was just the first person to do that within the film. It was like you said, it doesn't sound like they explain it that well.
He has like an internet following where he's got like his own YouTube channel with like not that many subscribers where he like shows his balance sheets and explains why he does stuff. But like even at the beginning of the movie, he like doesn't have that many people watching his live streams, and like people are calling him a nerd in the chat and stuff like that. So it's like, I get what they're doing, but it just was like a slightly disappointing, dumb movie without being like super offensive. So didn't totally love that one. If you're going to watch a dumb, funny movie this year, I would actually recommend No Hard Feelings over this.
With Jennifer Lawrence.
Yes, that way funnier than Dumb Money.
Okay, my next one, I just watched this a few days ago on Netflix. It is Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, the animated film sequel to the first Into the Spider-Verse from, I think, 5 years ago. So the first one I really liked. It, revolutionary animation style. The first time they've really made a movie about Miles Morales as a character. So, like, all that was interesting. This one, it's a sequel, and they kind of double down on everything. And there were parts that were kind of frivolous and felt like too much. And so it's like one of those movies where if you look away for 1 second, you miss like 5 cuts. And there's so many colors and so many things that are moving. Like, it is a lot to take in. And it's like, I get why people really, really like these movies, but it's also like sometimes just a little too much. So ultimately, I didn't like it as much as the first one. But I am still interested to seeing, because I think they're going to make a third one. But yeah, I would just say if you like Spider-Man, you should watch it. If you've seen the first one, you should watch it. Like, you don't need to tell me. You don't need me to tell you to watch it if you like those things. But
right.
Overall, really good movie. And then you have 2 more.
Yes. So my last 2 that I have, we're going into bangers territory. These are the types of movies you see, and then you've just finished filming or you've just finished recording your favorite movies from 2023, and then you see these 2, and you're like, shit, these should be in the top 10, because these are both really good. So the next one that I'll talk about is The Taste of Things. I was excited to see this because I knew it was going to be a cooking romance movie. And I knew that it was like a foreign film. I knew that it was going to be like quite like the only thing I generally knew is that basically the way that they show cooking in this movie is true to exactly how late 1800s France chefs would cook. Like the actors themselves were actually cooking the way they would cook back then. And yes, 75% of this movie is just up close cooking shots of people arranging food on plates, of no score, no background music, no nothing. Like, it is a very, very restrained movie. But like at its heart, this movie is basically like showing the duality of like cooking for someone and how that can be like an act of service and an act of love for another person. And it is like one of the most like sensual films I've ever seen that has very little sex in it. If any, there's not really any sex scenes, but like you really believe that these people are just like twin flames, are meant for each other. They have incredible chemistry. Do not watch this movie if you're hungry. Bring food, bring snacks, like you will get hungry. But it's just like such a nice, warm, happy film to just kind of like bask in the warm glow of it. And it does have like a bittersweet sort of tone to the last like 25% of the movie. That's not going to be a surprise. But the way that it ends, there's the final like shot of this movie is just such a beautiful, like awe-inspiring shot. And I would be lying if I said like I didn't cry watching this movie because it was so good. Yeah, I really, really enjoyed it. I really want to see it again. I mean, like they make a baked Alaska, like light it on fire in the movie and stuff. Like it's fucking cool. You're like, I want to eat everything they're eating.
Yeah, it sounds really good.
It's
Excited to see that one.
It's good, but that one ended up being, it moved up to my number 4 spot for the whole year. So yeah, what's your second to last one? Or second to last?
I'll just quickly go through both of these because it's Rustin and Nyad, which are both on Netflix. They're both biopics, and they're both Oscar nominated for acting roles. So Rustin is played by Coleman Domingo. It's about a gay man who was instrumental in the civil rights movement with Martin Luther King and like organizing. I think basically he organized or was one of the lead organizers of the March on Washington, which is where Martin Luther King had his I Have a Dream speech. So like it was fine. I mean, I wouldn't watch it again. There was just a few moments where I was just like, it's still too much acting, and then it was like,
oh, like
yeah, it was almost like Maestro and with Bradley Cooper. It wasn't terrible. It was just like, okay, he's doing a performance for sure, and like they made it very clear early on that he had no gay relations with Martin Luther King, which was like, okay, like we get that, like we weren't really thinking about that, but the fact that it, like most of the early parts of the movie, they're trying to convey that no one really likes this guy for the most part, and like he's trying to like convince the NAACP to do these movements, and they're like, no, we're not going to do it. And then he basically has to convince Martin Luther King Jr. to do the Washington March. But anyway, like I wouldn't recommend it, but I wouldn't say it's terrible. It was kind of just like, yeah, I get that it's an Oscar bait movie. And then Nyad is about a swimmer, a long-distance swimmer played by Annette Bening, who basically was trying to swim open water from Florida to Cuba in the 70s, and she couldn't do it. And that was pretty much the end of her swimming career. And then she basically turned 60 and was like, what am I doing with my life? I should try swimming again. And Jodie Foster plays her coach and best friend. And they're both nominated for Oscars, but they're not going to win. But it was okay. Like, I like the aspects of the geography and how they displayed her actually swimming and what was at stake. And it was very interesting to see that, you know, she gave it multiple tries. And like, there was one part where like she's like pretty decently far. And then all of a sudden a jellyfish stings her face and she just can't do anything. And they immediately have to stop. And then like the last time she does it, she has to wear like a jellyfish protection mask pretty much the whole time. So it's pretty interesting. And I think, you know, for the most part, Annette Bening's like in the water, like swimming, and you could tell she was exhausted, and I thought it was a good physical performance, but I wouldn't say she should win Best Actress at all. But anyway, if you're into swimming or if you're into motivational woman stories, feel like you should definitely watch it. And yeah, that was the last of mine. So what was your last movie?
My last movie gets my number 6 spot of the year, and it's American Fiction. This one I honestly just kind of wasn't expecting to be as good as it was. It's one of the funniest movies I've seen all year. If not, besides Barbie, this is probably the funniest movie I've seen all year. I went and saw this in a theater and it was packed. And it was really funny because it's one of those movies that you laugh and you feel wrong for laughing at certain parts, because it definitely plays into like a lot of sociopolitical humor, and it pokes fun at like neoliberal performative outrage over things, and like reminds you that like you being mad about something, or you performing as mad about something, doesn't actually help the actual issue. Yeah, I mean, the basic premise is that Jeffrey Wright is an author. He's famous in sort of like a minor way. Like, he's marginally famous for being an author, makes a good living off of it, but he writes just like regular fiction. And he's a Black man, obviously, but he keeps finding that his books get put in like the Black or African American section at the bookstore. And he's like annoyed by that, because he's like, I don't want a participation award. Like, I want to just be a good author. And basically the story, it takes a couple of twists and turns, but it's basically him grappling with, there's this other, one of his peers that is also an author, starts like feeding into like writing a book that's very like over the top, like story about being from the ghetto type of like story. And he's annoyed by that, because he's like, oh, you're just feeding like white liberal people what they want to hear about our culture. And that's not actually what either of us have gone through, because we're well off. And the movie just like in and of itself talks a lot about that. But it's also one of the funniest movies I've seen. Like I said, like there's so much like funny stuff, and Sterling K. Brown is hilarious in this movie. Like, he is constantly high or drunk in this movie. He's the brother to Jeffrey Wright, basically. And he is just like the perfect comic relief in this movie. And he does like a really, really good job at being like, I mean, I think he was nominated for like supporting actor. I don't necessarily think he should win, but he absolutely deserves the nomination. And there's a lot of like very just funny situational humor that happens in this movie, because ultimately Jeffrey Wright ends up sort of succumbing to the, what if I just wrote a jokey, like over the top Black book like this other woman, and I wrote it with a pseudonym so that no one knows it's me, and I could write this as like a trash joke, and then it actually gets very, very big. And he's like ashamed of it, is annoyed that he like sort of played into this. And then he sort of is like assuming two identities through the rest of the movie, where it's like he's himself, who is this like college professor, author man who just wants to be a very good author. And then he's also sort of this like fugitive convict man writing about his life of escaping from jail and getting shot at and stuff for this like fake book that he sort of wrote as a joke that ends up taking off. And so, yeah, honestly, like there's not a single person that I would not recommend this movie for. Like, it's so good and it's so funny. And there's like a lot of very like poignant pieces of like family drama that happen in this movie that are just very, very sweet. The mom starts developing dementia. The sister dies very early on in the movie. So it like deals with like grief, aging, loss, dating in like your older years of life, sibling relationships when you're adults, stuff like that. Growing up and moving away from your hometown and then coming back to your hometown for a time being. It's just such a good movie. Like, I had such a good day the day that I saw this, because it just like put me in such a good mood. I would highly recommend. I loved The Taste of Things, and technically that's like number 4 for me for the year. But if I have to recommend a movie for anybody, I would say like American Fiction, and then you would probably say Zone of Interest.
Yeah. If you want, we can quickly go through our updated rankings. You want to do top 20?
Yeah, that sounds good.
I'll just quickly run through mine. So my top 20 of 2023, or actually I'll do my top 23, just real quick. So number 23, I have Asteroid City. Liked it. Could have been better. 22, Migration, the duck movie. We already talked about. 21, Fallen Leaves, which you liked a lot more than I did. 20, Knock at the Cabin, the M. Night Shyamalan movie. Everyone should watch that one as well. Number 19, Saltburn. Number 18, Society of the Snow. 17, the Spider-Man animated movie. 16, Past Lives. 15, Bottoms. 14, Anatomy of a Fall. 13, Killers of the Flower Moon. 12, Rye Lane. 11, The Holdovers. Number 10, Napoleon. Number 9, Mission Impossible, Dead Reckoning. Number 8, May December. Number 7, Beau is Afraid. Number 6, The Zone of Interest. Number 5, Infinity Pool. Number 4, A Tiger in Paradise, which I talked about during our depression episode. Number 3, Barbie. Number 2, Oppenheimer. And number 1, Poor Things.
Nice. Okay, my top 23. I don't think I'm going to change this. I think I'm locked in. Number 23 is The Killer. Number 22 is Asteroid City. Number 21, Anatomy of a Fall. 20, Society of the Snow. 19, Beau is Afraid. 18, Killers of the Flower Moon. 17, All of Us Strangers. 16, which is funny because you also have this as your 16th, Past Lives. Number 15, Priscilla. Number 14, Mission Impossible, Dead Reckoning. Number 13, Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret. Number 12, Rye Lane, which I think you also have as number 12. Our rom-com romances tend to hit in the same spot. Number 11, Bottoms. Number 10, The Holdovers. Number 9, May December. 8, Saltburn. 7, Infinity Pool. 6, American Fiction. 5, Oppenheimer. 4, The Taste of Things. Number 3 is Fallen Leaves. Number 2 is Barbie. And number 1 is Poor Things. And I've only seen Poor Things one time, but
It was that good.
It was that good. I don't have any doubts in my mind. We could also just like quickly, I can pull up my watch list and filter for 2023. There are still a few 2023 movies that I have on my watch list that are either not available yet or I just haven't gotten around to it. We'll just quickly rattle a few off. There's a very short movie called Sometimes I Think About Dying, starring Daisy Ridley, that I really want to see. Passages, Late Night with the Devil. I still want to see Tiger in Paradise and The Zone of Interest.
Wonka?
I haven't seen Wonka yet. There's The Iron Claw.
Yeah, I want to see Ferrari, The Boy and the Heron. I know you want to see Dream Scenario.
Yep, I was going to mention that. So Dream Scenario, I still want to see.
Anyone but you.
Okay, I was hating on this movie because I've heard nothing good about it. But
Stock is rising.
The stock is rising. Sydney Sweeney is a babe. Glenn Powell is a babe. And I recently heard that Troye Sivan has a song on the soundtrack, and it's kind of hard for me to pass that up. I mentioned Hitman in 2024 Prospective, just because I know that one's supposed to be pretty good, but it's virtually 100% unavailable. I do still want to see Ferrari. And then there's this other one that I want to see that's not available anywhere called Humanist Vampire Seeking Consenting Suicidal Person, which sounds ridiculous, but is supposed to be pretty good. Yeah, I still have a couple more that I would like to see, but
it's like this every year. Like, we see more movies than anyone we know, and we still have 20 that we're like, we should watch this.
Exactly.
And it's just not available, or it's like $20, and it's
like Dream Scenario is probably the top of my watch list, and It was like available for rent for $19.99 for the longest time, and it's just now under $5. And I'm like,
Yeah,
Louise.
there's like this progression of at-home viewing for streaming where it's like, okay, it's on Amazon for $20, and then within a few weeks it'll go down to $6. And then like with Priscilla, that just got put on HBO Max, but that's like an example of like it's $20 for so long on Amazon, and then it's just like, oh, it's on Max for free if you
Or it's on
if you have it.
back on a flight.
Yeah, so it's kind of like you have to pick and choose when to watch some of these movies and how much money you want to spend watching some of them. But that was our catch up for 2023. We will be talking Oscars in 2 weeks to finalize the end of that movie season. And we will be all in on the rest of 2024. So stay tuned for more episodes.